Welcome back. It is Monday, March 9, 2026, and I am incredibly glad you are here joining us today.
Really glad to have you with us.
Because today, you and I, along with my brilliant co-host here, are going to take a microscope to one of the most, well, infamous villains in modern pop culture history.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at a character who has completely dominated the cultural conversation. I mean, inspiring countless internet debates, a mountain of memes, and some surprisingly deep philosophical questions. I am talking, of course, about the Mad Titan himself, Thanos.
It's really a character study that bridges this gap between comic book fantasy and intense real-world theoretical science.
Right. And to do that, we have gathered a truly eclectic stack of sources for you today. We are looking at a comprehensive Wikipedia history detailing his bizarre origin.
Which are wild, by the way.
Totally wild. We've also got population mathematics straight from the pages of Significance magazine.
Yeah.
We pulled a terrifying breakdown of global physics from a UCLA scientist. And to anchor the real-world implications, we are looking at an economic analysis from Cultura Collectiva.
It's a heavy stack.
It is. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly who this character is. We are going to explore his bizarre creation in the 1970s, his incredibly unique biology, and most importantly, we are going to subject his universe-altering snap to rigorous real-world science and economics.
Because the real-world implications of snapping away half of all life are wildly different than what you might see on a movie screen.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to fully grasp the catastrophic nature of the snap, we first need to analyze the mind that created the character,
Right.
and the resulting psychology of the character himself.
Right. The origin story of Thanos' creation is just a perfect reflection of the era he was born into. It starts with writer and artist Jim Starlin.
Back in the early 1970s.
Yeah, early 70s. Starlin had just finished his military service in the U.S. Armed Forces. He transitions out of the military, goes to college, and ends up taking a psychology class.
As you do.
Right. And during this class, the syllabus covers Sigmund Freud. Specifically, it focuses on Freud's concept of the human death drive, which is known as Thanatos.
Thanatos, yeah. It is the ultimate psychological impulse toward self-destruction and a return to an inorganic state.
So Starlin takes that heavy existential concept, shortens it to Thanos, and creates this brooding, death-obsessed alien.
A profoundly dark inspiration that initially took on a surprisingly underwhelming physical form.
Yes. The visual evolution is one of the funniest anecdotes in comic history.
It really is.
When Starlin first sketched Thanos, he actually drew him as a very thin, lean character. He was heavily inspired by the DC Comics character Metron.
Who's known for riding around the cosmos in a floating chair.
Right. So Starlin takes these early, skinny sketches to Marvel editor Roy Thomas. Thomas takes one look at this lean guy in a floating chair and essentially tells Starlin to abandon the subtle approach and bulk him up.
The quote from Thanos is fantastic.
It's so good. He told Starlin, beef him up. If you're going to steal one of the new gods, at least rip off Darkseid, the really good one.
It is a hilarious piece of industry history.
Yeah.
I mean, one of Marvel's most iconic, physically intimidating powerhouses only looks the way he does because an editor told an artist to openly rip off the competition's best villain.
Exactly. But the writers quickly ensured he became far more than just a Darkseid clone. They built a really dense biological and psychological profile for him.
Right. Biologically, Thanos is an Eternal.
Born on Saturn's moon, Titan.
Exactly. To two Eternals named Alars and Susan. But unlike the rest of his perfect human-looking race, Thanos was born carrying the deviant gene.
Right, and in the lore, the deviants are essentially the chaotic, unstable counterpart to the genetically perfect Eternals.
That gene made Thanos a massive purple mutant among his own beautiful kind. What's fascinating here is how that biological anomaly immediately triggers intense psychological trauma.
Oh, massive trauma.
His appearance was so shocking, so utterly foreign to his people, that the moment he was born, his mother, Suisong, suffered a severe psychotic break.
She took one look at her infant son, believed he was a monster destined to destroy all life in the universe, and immediately tried to murder him in the delivery room.
Yeah, having your own mother attempt to assassinate you on day one is going to leave some deeply seated psychological scars.
To say the least. And as an adolescent, Thanos was actually a pacifist, a quiet intellectual.
But as he grew, that trauma morphed into an utter fascination with nihilism and entropy, the inevitable, inescapable decline of all systems into disorder and death.
And this dark intellectual fascination eventually manifested into something literal. He fell in love with Mistress Death.
And because we're talking about a comic book universe, this isn't a metaphor.
Right.
Death is a literal physical entity, and Thanos becomes a fanatical romantic trying to win her affection.
He goes to horrifying lengths to woo her. He leaves his home planet, becomes an interstellar pirate, and even sires multiple children across the galaxy just to try and find some sort of emotional fulfillment.
But when Mistress Death finally visits him again, he decides to prove his ultimate devotion.
Yeah, he murders his entire pirate crew, and then he hunts down and murders every single one of his own children.
It is a level of fanaticism that completely separates him from a standard villain seeking money or political power.
Absolutely.
It establishes him as a being driven purely by an obsessive, destructive ideology, which makes the transition of the character into modern media so interesting to analyze.
It really is fascinating how his motivation had to evolve over time. I mean, wooing the literal embodiment of death works perfectly for a 1970s comic book, but to make him a compelling modern cinematic villain, his motivations had to mirror real-world anxieties.
That is where the shift from a death cult to twisted environmentalism happens.
Right. In later interpretations, his goal of wiping out half of all life is driven by a desire to solve overpopulation and resource scarcity.
Which ties directly back to a very real demographic panic from 1798.
Yes, an English cleric named Thomas Robert Malthus wrote a highly influential piece called An Essay on the Principle of Population that basically terrified the world.
Malthus observed what he believed to be a fundamental, inescapable mathematical discrepancy in how humans and resources grow. He theorized that human population grows geometrically.
That means it multiplies. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on.
The population doesn't just grow, it compounds.
But Malthus argued that food production and agricultural subsistence only grow arithmetically.
Meaning by simple addition, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Exactly. You have a population multiplying rapidly and a food supply inching along slowly.
Malthus believed that, inevitably, the geometric growth of humanity would outpace the arithmetic growth of agriculture, leading to famine, disease, and the absolute collapse of civilization.
And Thanos claims this exact Malthusian trap is what destroyed his home planet of Titan. He preaches that there were simply too many mouths to feed, not enough resources to go around, and society collapsed into ruin.
His justification for gathering the Infinity Stones to wipe out half the universe is an extreme cosmic application of 18th century Earth demographics.
He believes he is the only being in the universe with the iron will to enact a randomized, fair genocide to keep the population in check.
Which is terrifying logic.
It is. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if we take Thanos' Malthusian plan and subject it to the actual laws of physics and human logistics on Earth, the consequences go way beyond a neat and tidy 50% reduction.
A snap of the fingers looks clean on screen, but reality is incredibly messy.
We looked at a brilliant analysis by Justin Christensen, a research scientist from the UCLA physics department, who applied the mechanics of the snap directly to our modern world.
The premise is simple but terrifying. If Earth has roughly 7.6 billion people, Thanos snaps his fingers, and instantly exactly half, 3.8 billion people turn to dust.
The problem is that the death toll wouldn't magically stop at 3.8 billion. The secondary casualties would trigger a global kinetic catastrophe. Christensen points out that at any given moment, there are roughly 20,000 airplanes in the sky worldwide. If half the global population disappears randomly, probability dictates that about 25% of those planes will lose both of their pilots instantly.
That translates to 5,000 commercial airliners becoming massive, unguided projectiles plummeting from the sky.
Christensen estimates that alone would cause an immediate 500,000 deaths from plane crashes.
Furthermore, even for the flights that retain a co-pilot, the infrastructure guiding them down vanishes.
Yeah, think about air traffic control.
Exactly. There are roughly 14,000 air traffic controllers manning 500 towers just in the United States. Erase half of them, and the airspace becomes unmanageable chaos. Pilots will be flying blind into congested, uncontrolled zones.
And then think about your morning commute. There are about 1 billion vehicles worldwide, and roughly 10% of them are actively on the road at any given time. If you are on the highway and suddenly the driver in the lane next to you vanishes, their car doesn't just politely roll to a stop. It becomes a 2-ton unguided missile traveling at 60 miles an hour.
Now multiply that by the millions of cars on the road.
Factoring in the high-speed collisions with the surviving drivers, Christensen calculates roughly another 500,000 immediate fatalities.
And we haven't even touched on heavy industry. Freight trains carrying hazardous materials lose their engineers. Massive cargo ships drift into ports.
It's the nightmare.
The initial event is just the catalyst for a systemic infrastructure collapse. Modern civilization is a highly tuned machine that requires constant, specialized human maintenance.
The power grids, the water filtration systems, the supply chains that transport food and medicine, none of these run themselves. I mean, to you listening, imagine your local utility suddenly losing half their engineers overnight.
What happens to nuclear power plants when half the specialized technicians vanish?
Or what happens to the global internet when the massive cooling systems for server farms are left unmaintained? You can't just plug a random survivor into a role that requires a decade of engineering experience.
Within days, countless more people would die from disease outbreaks due to raw sewage backing up, freezing to death without power, or starvation because the global food supply chain simply shattered.
You are looking at a cascading failure of human civilization.
But looking beyond human infrastructure, it is also crucial to examine the environmental impact. What happens to the planet's ecosystem if half of all biological life disappears?
That's a great question, and Justin Christensen's UCLA analysis covers this as well. And the resilience of the planet is staggering.
It really is.
You might assume that losing half the plant life on Earth would cause an immediate oxygen crisis, effectively suffocating the survivors. But Christensen notes that even if all photosynthesis stopped entirely, if every single plant was gone, there is so much oxygen currently stored in our atmosphere that levels would remain breathable for 1,000 years.
And the microbial world is even more resilient. Consider the microscopic organisms that form the foundation of our ecosystem. A single E. coli cell divides every 20 minutes.
Every 20 minutes.
Even if Thanos wiped out virtually all of them, if you leave just one single E. coli cell behind, it begins multiplying immediately. In just 20 minutes, it divides. Within a remarkably short window, that single cell becomes 7 million. Nature rebounds with ferocious speed.
Which brings us to the very root of Thanos' entire argument: resources.
Right.
He claims the universe literally lacks the capacity to sustain its population. We pulled an economic analysis from Cultura Collectiva that tackles this exact premise, and it reveals a massive, fatal flaw in Thanos' Malthusian logic.
The premise of absolute scarcity is mathematically incorrect.
According to global agricultural data, the world currently produces 1.5 times the food needed to feed the entire global population.
The Earth is already producing a massive surplus. The problem is not agricultural capacity. The problem is logistics and waste.
Right. To put that in perspective, in the United States alone, $165 billion worth of food is wasted every single year.
You have farm-to-table loss, grocery stores tossing out bruised produce, and massive supply chain inefficiencies.
Now, to you listening, we want to pause here for a second. The source material from Cultura Collectiva connects this scarcity issue directly to unrestricted capitalism and suggests leaning toward more socialist distribution models to ensure everyone has access to basic resources.
Right.
To be incredibly clear on this deep dive, we are totally impartial. We aren't taking a political side, and we aren't endorsing capitalism or radical socialism. We are just here to share the lens our sources use.
Exactly.
And in this case, the source uses these economic models to prove that Thanos' core premise of absolute universal scarcity is mathematically false.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source argues that eliminating half the population does absolutely nothing to fix a broken distribution system.
It really doesn't.
If you snap away half the people, but leave the infrastructure, the mechanisms of waste, and the unequal distribution models exactly the same, the surviving wealthy populations will still hoard resources, food will still rot in landfills, and marginalized populations will still starve.
You haven't cured the disease of scarcity. You have merely reduced the number of patients while keeping the toxic environment intact. So what does this all mean? If his philosophical premise is demonstrably wrong and the physics of his plan cause unintended catastrophic suffering on a global scale, surely the snap at least buys the universe a significant amount of time, right?
That brings us to the mathematical analysis published in Significance magazine, which exposes the ultimate tragedy and futility of the Mad Titan's grand plan. Let's look at Earth's population again.
Okay. If Thanos reduces our population of 7.6 billion by exactly half, we are left with 3.8 billion people.
And the researchers at Significance point out that 3.8 billion is not some prehistoric number. That was the exact population of Earth in the year 1970. Thanos sacrifices everything murders billions, and all he manages to do is dial the Earth's population clock back to the disco era.
That is wild, and human populations do not remain static. Assuming a constant global growth rate of just 1.09% per year, which was the estimated rate around the time of the analysis, we can calculate exactly how long it takes for that 3.8 billion to compound and become 7.6 billion again.
The math is absolutely brutal.
It takes exactly 64 years.
This raises an important question. What is the point of all that trauma, all that sacrifice, all that death, if the grand universe-altering solution is nothing more than a 64-year temporary fix?
64 years is a single human lifetime.
You would literally have people who survive the snap living to see the population hit the exact same number before they die.
In 64 years, the population is right back to where it started, facing the exact same structural and distribution problems as before, except now carrying the generational trauma of a random universal genocide.
It completely reframes Thanos. He isn't a dark visionary making the hard choices. He is a deeply irrational fanatic who refuses to do basic demographic math.
He is a villain so obsessed with the concept of balance that he fundamentally failed to calculate the actual weights on the scale.
So true.
To summarize this deep dive for you, Thanos is a brilliant, virtually indestructible Eternal with a healing factor and a genius intellect. He is a master tactician who can manipulate cosmic energy and single-handedly defeat the universe's greatest offenders.
But his ultimate philosophical masterstroke, the snap, is thoroughly debunked by basic arithmetic, supply chain logistics, and food production statistics.
He is a cosmic powerhouse with the economic foresight of an 18th century cleric.
His terrifying physical presence masks a remarkably fragile ideology.
Now, before we let you go, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. We've spent this deep dive dismantling the flaws in Thanos' ideology using science and economics, but there is a fascinating piece of lore from the comic source material that perfectly encapsulates the emptiness of his grand plan.
And it comes from the character himself.
It is the story of King Thanos.
It is easily one of the most chilling and revealing storylines in Marvel history.
In the comics, there is a timeline where Thanos actually wins. Millions of years in the future, a version of Thanos succeeds in destroying nearly all life in the universe. He sits on a throne made of rubble, reigning over a dead, empty cosmos.
He is King Thanos, and he has achieved his ultimate goal.
But he is miserable. He realizes that being the king of absolutely nothing is a hollow, agonizing victory. So, using a fragment of the Time Stone, King Thanos pulls his younger, present-day self millions of years into the future.
Why?
Because King Thanos is the last being left, and he wants to die so he can finally be reunited with Mistress Death. But his ego dictates that the only person worthy of killing Thanos is Thanos.
It is a supreme act of narcissism, maintained even at the literal end of the universe.
So the younger Thanos arrives in the future, expecting to see glorious conquest. Instead, what does he find? He finds his older self to be pathetic, submissive, begging to be killed.
The younger Thanos looks at this ultimate victory, looks at this whining, broken old man who achieved everything they ever wanted, and he is absolutely disgusted by how empty and pointless it truly is.
He is so profoundly repulsed by his own success that he refuses to grant the older Thanos the release of death.
Instead, younger Thanos uses the Time Stone to travel back to the present day.
He resolves never to become that pathetic old man, effectively resetting the timeline and erasing King Thanos from existence. I want you to mull that over today. After all the Avengers, all the Guardians of the Galaxy, all the cosmic entities and armies that tried to stop him, in the end, the only thing that could truly defeat the flawed ideology of the Mad Titan was the Mad Titan himself.
What a way to end it.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the science, the math, and the madness of Thanos. We hope you learned something new and maybe feel a little bit better about our own planet's future. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will catch you on the next deep dive. Take care.